Amazing revelation, when she discovered her CEO homeless, an inspiring transformation unfolded. Amanda sat in her cluttered living room, the weight of her world crashing down like the snowflakes that gathered outside her window. As a middle school science teacher in a small Midwestern town, her life had always been about sacrifice her son Jason's future first and foremost. "You have to keep your grades up, honey," her voice echoed in her mind, a reminder of the pressure she constantly pushed onto him in hopes of a scholarship to a prestigious university. Yet, every bill that arrived felt like a fresh stab, slicing through the dreams she'd let gather dust. The flickering light of the TV illuminated her as she filled out another form for a tutoring session that barely paid enough to keep their lights on. She tried to breathe, to focus on the busy work she had surrounded herself with, but the internal echoes of what could have been lingered. That evening, restless, she decided to volunteer at the local shelter, something she convinced herself was for the community. But deep down, she knew it was also a way to drown out her own feelings of inadequacy. The cold nipped at her skin as she wrapped her scarf tighter, feeling the chill of her unfulfilled aspirations creeping closer. When she entered the shelter, the scent of warm soup attempted to mask the desperation of those gathered. With a heavy heart, she served meals, grateful to help, but also acutely aware of her own limitations. Then, there he was, Brian. Disheveled and lost, he caught her gaze. She felt a flicker of recognition. As they spoke, his story unraveled like a poignant thread. The CEO of a once flourishing company, reduced to this moment by an economic collapse. "I had everything," he revealed, his voice breaking, "but I lost myself in the chase of success." Her heart twisted, his weight of failure echoed her own hidden tribulations. As they conversed, Amanda shared snippets of her teaching, while Brian charted the burdens of high expectations that he, like her, had borne for family loyalty. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days turned into weeks as their friendship flourished within the shelter's comforting chaos. Yet, Amanda felt a creeping unease. Brian challenged her, pushed her to imagine a path towards her dormant passions. But with every suggestion, her fears surged like tides threatening to drown her. She questioned, could she truly pursue a grant for innovative teaching techniques? Would Jason's dreams fall by the wayside if she took this leap for herself? Rumors soon swirled, harsh whispers about her connection with Brian slicing through her fragile aspirations. An influential board member seething with judgment questioned her qualifications, her ability to lead in a field dominated by prestige. Amanda's heart sank. Could she withstand the scrutiny, or would she shatter under the pressure of societal expectations? The dichotomy of teacher versus aspiring dreamer tore at her insides like jagged glass. Amanda stood on the edge, teetering between fear and determination. Would her fight against a system favoring privilege be worth the risk? Could she reclaim her voice from the depths of quiet desperation? As the whispers grew louder, she felt more cornered than ever. The uncertainty tightened its grip, and in that moment of maximum anguish, Amanda grappled with the horrible truth. In the chaos of ambition, had she let herself become immeasurable, unworthy? Her future lay like a crumbling cliff beneath her feet, ready to give way. Would she be cast away into the depths of a system that overlooked her true value? As she faced these questions, an urge to fight ignited within, but the stakes loomed high. Amanda awoke the next morning with a jolt, the anxiety clinging tightly to her like a second skin. She glanced around her cluttered living room, filled with remnants of lesson plans and reminders of her ambitions that had slipped through her fingers. The rumble of the passing train echoed through her small town, a metaphor of her own life going somewhere, but barely moving. As she prepared for another day of teaching, Amanda rummaged through her old files in search of inspiration. Perhaps there was a lesson plan that could awaken her buried enthusiasm. She found a forgotten project about the importance of scientific inquiry, a concept she had infused with her dreams of connecting with her students. The spark ignited just a little, illuminating the corners of her mind previously clouded with self-doubt. At school, the chatter of her students filled the air, bouncing between the walls of her classroom. They were alive with energy, but as she looked at their bright faces, she struggled to connect. Every lesson plan felt like an echo, devoid of the passion she'd once had. It was Brian's voice, fragile and determined, that resonated in the back of her mind. "You can transform this, Amanda," he had said, nudging her boundaries. Determined to shake off her despondency, she lifted her head high and decided to rework her teaching approach. She introduced a project that engaged her students directly inventing solutions to real-world problems. Her heart pounded with excitement as she reimagined herself as a mentor rather than just an instructor. Yet, the shadows of doubt loomed like a storm cloud. What if her efforts failed? The board members' critical gaze haunted her. Would they laugh at her new ideas, proving the rumors right about her incompetence? She had always played it safe, confined by the limits other people imposed on her, but now the idea of striving for something greater burrowed into her mind. After school, Amanda made her way to the library, seeking solace among the stacks of books that had always inspired her. With each turn of a page, she began to explore the possibilities of grants for innovative teaching. She scribbled notes in a small notebook, her heart racing with potential. As she dug deeper into the world of educational grants, her fervor resurfaced. The prospect of bringing her ideas to life gave her energy. Amanda realized that she had the power to touch her students' lives beyond the classroom, and with every scribbled note, her vision crystallized. She could wield the tools to create not just lessons, but a transformative learning environment. The weight of judgment still loomed, but for the first time, she felt a sense of purpose growing. The darkness she had lived under began to flicker with the light of possibility. Pleased with her progress, she contacted Brian to share her dreams and newfound ambition. Their exchanges turned into brainstorming sessions, each skimming the surface of ideas. He encouraged her to stand strong against the adversaries whispering in the hallways, stating that vulnerability could be a source of strength. But the whispers escalated. They weren't just murmurs anymore, the poison was spreading. During a staff meeting, the same board member who had questioned her qualifications openly challenged her vision, suggesting that the school needed someone with more reputable experience. Amanda felt the air leave her lungs. It was a direct blow, a pointed accusation that aimed to undermine everything she had begun to build, a ruthless reminder of the precarious edge she stood upon. With her heart pounding in defiance, she gathered her thoughts. The moment of truth loomed ever closer. Would she cower back into the shadows or step forward and redefine her path? Biting her lip to suppress the tremor of doubt, Amanda felt the urgency electrifying the air around her. She stood at a crossroads. In the burgeoning silence of the meeting room, she made her decision. Would she confront the judgment and fight for her vision, or would she retreat into the comfortable shell of her past? The stakes had never been higher. The moment had arrived for her to face her fears and define her worth. Amanda's heart raced as she felt all eyes upon her. The board member's disdainful glare pierced through the room, pushing against her resolve. In that charged silence, she fought to keep her voice steady. "I understand your concerns," she began, forcing each word past the tightening knot in her throat. "But I believe that innovation in education requires taking risks. We owe it to our students to guide them in tackling real-world problems." A few murmurs of agreement swept through the room, fueling her determination. The notion of stepping out of the shadows and challenging the status quo invigorated her, even as a small part of her still trembled with fear. She could see the board member's skepticism etched on his face, an unyielding wall to scale. "I propose we run an experiment," she continued, feeling her confidence build with each passing second. "Let us implement this project as a pilot program. If it fails, I'll take full responsibility. But if it succeeds, we could be opening doors for future generations of students." A pause rippled through the room. Every moment felt like an eternity, yet a new energy was surging within her. Amanda hardly recognized this version of herself, the one willing to risk everything for something she believed in. The conversations she had shared with Brian echoed reassuringly in her mind, reminding her that vulnerability and authenticity could indeed be powerful allies. Empowerment doesn't come from complacency. It comes from exploration, she asserted, meeting the board member's gaze. She could sense the scrutiny, but she didn't back down. This was her moment to step from behind the curtain, the time for her voice to be heard, unapologetically. The board member glanced around the room. Some faces mirrored her trepidation, while others showed sparks of intrigue. "You're saying you want to gamble with time and resources on a whimsical hope?" he challenged, sharpening his words like knives. "Yes," Amanda replied, drawing a deep breath. "Because education shouldn't be confined to textbooks. We need to adapt. I want to nurture critical thinkers and problem solvers, not just passive recipients of knowledge." Shockwaves of realization coursed through Amanda. She was challenging deeply rooted systems. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of her newfound determination. This was the conversation she had longed for. No more hiding behind safe strategies, she was proposing something revolutionary. In the days that followed, Amanda felt a shift within herself. The whispers around her morphed into a chorus of expectations as colleagues began to take notice of her passion. While some supported her vision, others rolled their eyes or dismissed her as naive. Yet, each point of contention only strengthened her resolve. Hours turned into evenings as she immersed herself in research and strategic planning. For weeks, Amanda prepared her proposal, reaching out to potential partners and collaborators, building momentum behind her project. She was dedicated to creating a robust strategy that would validate her vision and shield her against further critiques. But the looming board meeting weighed heavily on her mind. Would they consider her hard work and vision, or would her aspirations be crushed again? Each attempt to find hope felt fraught with uncertainty. The stakes seemed impossibly high, and the looming shadow of the board member's doubt was still fresh. As she finalized her presentation, she paused to reflect on the journey. This wasn't just about defending herself, it was about standing up for what she believed in and transforming her students' education. She envisioned the day they'd share their ideas with pride, pushing boundaries she had only just dared to reverse. While Amanda felt ready, she couldn't ignore an unsettling feeling that seemed to whisper in the back of her mind. What if she was still missing something critical? What if her vision wasn't enough? Determined, she returned to the library for a moment of clarity, flipping through pages filled with countless stories of educators who had triumphed against the odds. And then she stumbled upon a report about a successful program led by a homeless former CEO, an unexpected pivot that changed not only his life but the lives of hundreds of students. Thoughts began to churn as possibilities flickered like a flame ready to ignite. What if she could incorporate this story into her pitch? Perhaps she could demonstrate the impact of lived experience as a powerful teaching tool. This realization could shift her narrative entirely, merging transformative learning with empathy and grit. As she tightened her notebook, she felt a resurgence of excitement. She was one step closer. The moment of truth awaited her, and it was time to rise even stronger. The next board meeting was approaching, a critical opportunity to showcase not just her project but also to redefine what it meant to lead. The idea of elevating others, particularly voices previously unseen, lingered enticingly in her thoughts. Would the board welcome this radical new idea, or would Amanda find herself standing at yet another precipice? The clock ticked toward an impending confrontation, and she braced herself for whatever lay ahead. Amanda entered the boardroom with a blend of excitement and anxiety swirling within her. The polished wooden table gleamed under the fluorescent lights, reflecting a seriousness she felt deeply. This was not merely about presenting her educational proposal, it was about asserting her place in a world that often dismissed her insights. As she prepared to address the board, a familiar feeling washed over her, a combo of dread and fervor as she anticipated the intense scrutiny that would follow her every word. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. The faces around her displayed a mixture of expectation and skepticism, but she wouldn't let that deter her. She took a deep breath and shared the poignant story of the former CEO whose journey from homelessness to leadership transformed countless lives. "Imagine," she suggested, "what stories we overlook while championing traditional paths. What if we could infuse our curriculum with these lived experiences?" As she spoke, she could see the board member who had challenged her last time leaning in, curiosity flitting across his features. It was a small victory, one that provided her with a charge of confidence. The montage of struggles and triumphs she had planned to share was beginning to take shape, punctuated by the realities that often went unexamined in their orbits of academia. "You're advocating for empathy as a cornerstone of education?" A board member interjected, her tone a mixture of disbelief and intrigue. "Are we to dredge up everyone's story to shape our pedagogical methods?" Amanda's heart raced, but she remained grounded. "Not everyone's story, but those that resonate. We're fostering critical thinking and creativity that finds solutions in the most unexpected places. What better way to teach our students than to show them that resilience lies in the diversity of human experience?" She could detect shifts among the board members. The initial reluctance she sensed turned into contemplative nods. Perhaps this was more than an abstract concept, it resonated at an emotional level. For the first time in a long while, Amanda felt a fragile connection to her peers, a sense that they were joining her on this journey. Yet, the voice of doubt didn't dissipate entirely. "But isn't this just an idealistic approach? The world is still about grades and standardized tests," a different member asserted, grounded in traditionalism. "How do you propose we measure success?" "Success doesn't always show itself in numbers," Amanda countered, her tone sharpening. "True success is found in students who leave our classrooms believing they can change the world, equipped with the problem-solving skills to do so. I'm not suggesting we throw out metrics, but we must evolve them. Integrating these stories enhances critical engagement, making learning applicable and impactful." As she spoke, Amanda felt a pivotal transformation within herself. She wasn't merely advocating for a project, she was advocating for a revolution in thought, a fundamental shift in the educational paradigm. Those weeks of preparation now coalesced into a unified vision, and she reveled in the clarity. With her heart racing, she sensed the debate growing fiercer, ideas were colliding and simmering. Still, the raw support she saw beginning to emerge was undeniable. Each argument was a chance to fortify her resolve, to push against the very boundaries that sought to restrain her. Just as she felt they were warming to her ideas, the skeptical board member fixed her with another piercing gaze. "What happens if this fails, Amanda? What will you do then?" His tone carried the weight of years spent safeguarding conventions. Her mind raced, contemplating those very possibilities. What if everything she had worked for collapsed? But standing her ground became instinctual. "If it fails, I will learn. I'll adapt and iterate, refining the process until it shines. Failure is just another step toward success. It is the very essence of growth." As she concluded, a mix of emotions blurred her vision. Would they embrace her vision or turn away, retreating into complacency? The air hung thick with anticipation. Now, it was out of her hands. She felt both liberated and acutely vulnerable, aware that the next moments could either shatter her ambitions or propel her toward unprecedented heights. And then, the board member leaned back, a flicker of contemplation shadowing his face. "We'll consider your proposals," he said, his voice betraying nothing but resolution. "But know this, your journey won't end here. Even if we greenlight this, the real challenge is maintaining momentum." The gravity of his words struck her deeply. The battle for her vision might be just beginning, and she had to be ready for the fortitude demanded ahead. This was more than a proposal, it was a calling. As she gathered her notes, adrenaline coursed through her veins. What lay ahead was unknown, and for the first time in a long while, she felt ready to confront it. She stepped out of the boardroom with a profound realization: she was not just navigating barriers, she was in pursuit of a legacy. But as she rounded the corner, the weight of expectation pressed against her back. She would need allies, supporters willing to embrace change with her. The question danced in her mind: who among her colleagues would join her cause, and who would remain steadfast in their skepticism? In her heart, she knew the next steps would involve more than meetings, they would require mobilization. How would she turn a small victory into an unstoppable movement? The countdown to her next challenge had already begun. The aftermath of her presentation settled heavily in Amanda's mind as she navigated the corridors of the office. She felt the boardroom's tension linger in the air like an unresolved debate. Each footstep echoed her uncertainty, but also a burgeoning resolve that glimmered beneath the surface. This wasn't just a proposal anymore, it was a lens through which she viewed education's potential to transform lives. Yet, the excitement was laced with fear. Amanda hadn't just positioned her ideas, she had staked her career on them. The very thought made her stomach churn. What if they didn't implement her vision? Or worse, what if it fell flat? Questions lurked, their claws sinking into her newfound clarity, threatening to unravel her confidence. Reaching her desk, she spread her notes across the walnut surface, its texture grounding her. She began to formulate a plan, focusing on ways to rally support. Who could she approach? Which colleagues might resonate with her ideals? She opened her laptop, instinctively flipping through folders of past collaborations, eager to identify potential allies. Names floated into her mind, a few in the curriculum department, perhaps a couple from psychology. There would be detractors, she had to be ready for them, too. As the day progressed, doubts crept in, casting shadows across her enthusiasm. Would they view her as an outlier, a threat to the established order? The easy path would be conformity, wrapping her ideas in a cloak of traditionalism. But what had she learned if not to challenge the norm? Each time she wavered, she envisioned the students, those whose stories mirrored the former CEO's resilience. That image fortified her, it became a mantra, urging her forward. The following morning, she scheduled casual meetings. Over coffee, she pitched her vision of integrating personal narratives into the curriculum. Met with a mix of enthusiasm and trepidation, she sensed a spark in one colleague, Sarah, whose expertise in social justice education complemented Amanda's mission. "I see what you mean," Sarah said, excitement creeping into her voice. "If we could highlight those narratives, it could shift entire classrooms." Encouraged, Amanda pressed on, pitching to another colleague, a relatively new teacher named Brian. While he was skeptical, his concerns about logistical execution revealed a blind spot in her plan. "All good ideas need a framework," he emphasized. "What's your strategy for this?" The realization hit hard. Amanda hadn't even considered the practical elements. She could articulate her vision but had been lacking a concrete approach to actualize it. Instead of retreating, she leaned into the discomfort. "If we build the framework together, what could that look like?" she asked, embracing a collaborative spirit. With Brian's analytical mind and Sarah's fervor, the trio convened in the coming weeks. Ideas flowed, and their meetings morphed from brainstorming into lively strategic planning. They drafted whiteboards filled with concepts, transition points, and potential activities, a living document that transformed rather than confined their vision. Amanda felt a pang of thrill she hadn't experienced since her early days on the teaching floor. However, with every advancing step, Amanda grappled with nagging anxiety. The skeptical board member's words replayed in her head: "The real challenge is maintaining momentum." Maintaining momentum seemed impossible when faced with the juggernaut of conventional resistance. Notes of enthusiasm mixed with frustration, colliding with her sense of urgency. How could she bring them into this transformative journey and convert the skeptics into advocates? She strategized grassroots meetings, aiming to translate her lofty vision into digestible parts for presentation at the next board meeting, an opportunity to expand her influence. But as she gathered further insights and ideas, a realization struck her: knowledge wasn't enough. She had to confront not only the external challenges but her internal fears as well. Could she stand unyielding when faced with direct opposition? What if they labeled her as naive, another idealist losing touch with reality? The question grew heavier, demanding her attention. In her quest to build a new educational foundation, she found herself confronting not just the environment around her but the limits she had placed on her own capability. Each decision moving forward would hold implications not just for her proposal but for her identity. Amanda recognized the implications of her challenge. Her success or failure would hinge not only on her ideas but on her resolve to face the pushback from those who felt threatened by change. Building momentum would demand everything she had: the passion, the intellect, the vulnerability to accept failure as a learning experience. But first, she had to confront her deepest fear. The pivotal moment was drawing closer where she needed to face her most challenging opponent, herself. The clock ticked relentlessly. If she wanted to inspire change, she had to create a foundation strong enough to withstand scrutiny. Would she embrace the challenge or retreat? The next meeting loomed large, and her pulse quickened at the thought of facing the board again. Would they see her vision, or would she be met with an avalanche of doubt? Only one way to find out: the moment of truth awaited. Amanda paced her small office, her eyes darting between the stack of notes and her laptop screen, betraying the whirlwind of thoughts spiraling in her mind. The imminent board meeting loomed like a storm cloud overhead, gathering intensity with each tick of the clock. Each time she visualized the faces of the board members, stern and skeptical, a gnawing doubt tightened its grip around her heart. Would she genuinely inspire them, or would her dream dissolve beneath their critical gazes? Her meetings with Sarah and Brian had ignited something in her, a flicker of excitement that made her question why she had ever allowed fear to reign. She had grappled with the notion of safety, grasping at conventional methodologies like a lifeline in turbulent waters. But now she stood at a precipice, feeling the warm wind of potential change pressing against her face. The choice was no longer about blending in, it was about boldly standing apart. The night before the board meeting, Amanda found herself sitting cross-legged on her living room floor. The dim light flickered from her desk lamp, illuminating a patchwork of colorful index cards with key points scrawled hastily in her handwriting. She had mapped the argument, where she would position her vision, outlining the stories of students who needed to be seen, heard, and understood. But beneath that facade of preparation lay a growing tide of fear. This wasn't simply a presentation, this was exposing a vulnerable part of herself, her values, her beliefs about what education should be. Focus on the students, she muttered to herself, channeling Sarah's infectious enthusiasm. Every creative idea flowed from the notion that education could not merely be an academic exercise, it should be a lifeline threading humanity into the fabric of classrooms. With each iteration of her outline, she became more attuned with her purpose. Morning arrived with a brisk chill that made her breath curl in the air. Amanda dressed meticulously, her attire reflecting the resolve she intended to embody. Gone was the hesitance, today she would wear her conviction. As she walked into the boardroom, she could feel the weight of expectation pressing on her shoulders. Their eyes settled on her, some in curiosity, others with barely concealed skepticism. The meeting commenced. As Amanda unfurled her proposal, she focused on the vibrant stories that gave shape to her vision. Students like Tommy, whose academic journey was stifled by anxiety, or Nadia, whose dreams of pursuing science were overshadowed by cultural expectations. Each narrative she presented was laced with passion, rooted in both research and compassion. Yet vulnerability brought tension. The board member she dreaded, Mr. Thompson, reclined in his chair, arms crossed beneath his chin. Are we really suggesting that introducing personal narratives is a solution to fundamental educational challenges? He interrupted, his tone ice-cold and dismissive. The room held its breath, and Amanda felt a surge of fear threatening to collapse her confidence. Mr. Thompson, she began, her voice steadier than she felt, every educational challenge we face intersects with the individual experiences of our students. Personal narratives create deeper connections and relevance in what we teach. The corners of the room shifted, even some of her supporters seemed leaned back, waiting for her to falter. "Sounds lovely," he replied, with an edge of sarcasm. "But lovely ideas don't carry weight in a curriculum that focuses on standardized testing." His words stung, a direct hit against the very foundation of her beliefs. Amanda inhaled sharply, the realization dawning upon her she wasn't merely battling him, she was wrestling with a system that had embraced rigidity, shunning the kind of innovation she was advocating. There lay her challenge the narrative that change was unwelcome. Should she cling to buoyancy amidst the waves of skepticism, or would she drown in conformity? Amanda straightened and recalled an old mentor's advice: real courage lies in speaking your truth, even when it costs you. "This isn't about disregarding standards," she retorted, her voice gaining momentum. "It's about enhancing the curriculum through the very fabric of our students' lives. Learning should mirror living, not exist in a vacuum of assessments." The tension hung thick in the air, but in that moment, Amanda glimpsed the eye of the storm. The conversations that had flowed during her collaborative sessions with Sarah and Brian echoed in her mind, providing a bedrock of clarity amidst chaos. She connected with the passion of her intentions, redirecting the discourse back to the heart of her proposal. As the meeting continued, Amanda saw shifting faces among her colleagues, sparks of desire for change ignited where uncertainty had previously resided. They rallied behind her words, inspiring others to engage more actively. Enthusiasm began to swirl, seeping through the cracks of skepticism. Despite this, Mr. Thompson remained unyielding, an immovable object against her energetic momentum. The closing moments approached, and Amanda couldn't shake the feeling of his silent challenge. The battle was far from over, acceptance would not come easily, and she had emerged unscathed yet aware that more would be required from her. And then it struck her this wasn't just about a proposal. It had morphed into a personal expedition of discovery. Today proved her competence and vulnerability were equally vital components of her evolving self. Just as she felt the depths of her fears, she recognized the emerging leader within her, ready to fight for a cause that resonated deeply inside her spirit. She was fortified, understanding that the path ahead required more than just a successful meeting. It demanded tenacity in the face of resistance, commitment to her vision, and unwavering faith in her capacity to evoke genuine change. Would she find the fortitude to continue despite pushback as the tides of formality threatened to overwhelm her? The journey to influence was only beginning, and Amanda sensed that the hardest battles, the ones within herself, lay ahead. Amanda left the boardroom, her heart racing as she navigated the sterile hallways, departure mingled with exhilaration. She had held her ground, a flicker of electricity still buzzing in her fingertips, but the specter of Mr. Thompson loomed large in her thoughts. His icy dismissal of her ideas had struck a nerve, intensifying the challenge she now faced in advocating her vision. There was a fine line between tenacity and naivete, and she had to tread carefully. As she settled into her office once more, surrounded by the scattered notes that had served as her lifeline, Amanda felt the weight of the encounter deepen her resolve. It wasn't merely about presenting innovations, it was about believing in them fiercely, even in the face of derision. But how could she sustain that momentum? The vision had to evolve beyond this single presentation, transforming into a sustainable movement within the organization. She took a deep breath, eyes drifted to her personal goals painted in vibrant colors on a large poster in her office: empowerment through education, inclusion for all stories, and innovate to inspire. Each line reminded her of her purpose. They were anchors in the tempest of skepticism that awaited her. Fueled by the resolve swelling in her chest, Amanda began to strategize. She recalled the tales of those students Tommy and Nadia who exemplified the struggles buried beneath standardized testing metrics. Their stories had been the heart of her proposal, now they could provide the foundation for her ongoing efforts. She needed to amplify their voices, to illustrate how deeply ingrained and personal the educational landscape could be. Amanda arranged a meeting with Sarah and Brian. Their collaboration had ignited her passion, and now she sought their insights on how to push these ideas further. As soon as they gathered in her office, the room crackled with potential. "We need a broader initiative," she announced, urgency threading through her words. "We can gather stories from students across the district. This could be a series, as a means to showcase how individualized education resonates beyond the boardroom." "That could work," Sarah nodded, enthusiasm lighting her eyes. "If we present it as an ongoing project, it might not feel like a threat to the traditional framework." Brian chimed in, "We can create workshops, sessions where teachers learn to integrate these narratives into their classrooms. Show them at isn't about abandoning standards, it's about enhancing them with depth." The ideas flowed rapidly, a cascade of strategies that began to form a tangible plan. They discussed outreach methods, utilizing social media to promote the narratives, and collaborating with other educational leaders willing to embrace change. Amanda felt the energy of their creativity wrapping around her, reinforcing her burgeoning identity as an innovator in a resistant environment. Yet even as hope flickered in her heart, doubts poked through, whispering caution. Would this be enough to sway individuals like Mr. Thompson? Could she truly inspire an authentic shift within the institution? The landscape of education was vast, and one project risked being mere surface tinkering if not supported by structural change. Weeks turned to months, and Amanda found herself navigating through the complex ecosystem of educational policy and administrative resistance. The project launched, yielding student stories that sparked conversations among teachers. But meeting continued pushback from skeptics reminded her of the importance of resilience and unwavering convictions. Each denial was a ripple in a much larger water, and Amanda learned to ride the waves, harness her emotional intelligence, and fortify herself against the challenges ahead. One afternoon, as she prepared for yet another presentation, this time to a committee comprising community leaders, she felt a twinge of excitement rather than dread. The familiar narrative of doubt had started to shift. With the student stories woven into her proposals, the focus expanded beyond simply changing curriculum. She was now a catalyst for transformation. Just as Amanda settled into her presentation notes, a message pinged on her phone, a strange notification from her employer's mentorship program. It read, "You will want to join this meeting. Important matter regarding future leadership." A knot of apprehension curled in her stomach. Had she inadvertently stepped into an arena larger than she intended? Now she stood at a crossroads, the tangible taste of innovation mingling with a subtle tension of unpredictability, awakening questions about her role in a systemic change she hadn't imagined. Was there more at stake than just a project she was spearheading? As she readied to step into greatness, Amanda sensed that the challenges ahead would not be individual skirmishes, but a much broader, more intricate battle. Would new leadership opportunities unveil unexpected paths, or would they further entrap her in conventionality? The future loomed ahead, a landscape obscured in shadows, but her purpose was clear: ensure the stories of those unheard echoed into every corner of the institution. Amanda arrived at the designated meeting room, her mind racing with apprehension and a flicker of anticipation. She had prepared for this moment meticulously, yet the uncertainty weighed on her like dense fog. Glancing around the room, she noted the serious expressions of the attendees' senior leaders, consultants, and members of the mentorship program. This was not just another meeting, it was a potential turning point in her career. As the introductions began, Amanda strained to focus. Each speaker outlined their successes and ambitions within the organization, a parade of accolades that seemed to heighten her sense of inadequacy. The knot in her stomach tightened, but she reminded herself of her purpose. She was there to advocate for change, to ensure student voices were not merely heard but were integral to the fabric of their educational experience. When it was her turn to speak, she could feel the weight of their eyes on her, and for a fleeting moment, she hesitated. But as the thoughts of Tommy and Nadia flooded her mind, the warmth of fortitude emerged. This was about them, not her insecurities. Summoning her confidence, she shared her journey, the narratives they had collected, and how real stories could reshape educational policies to be more humane and responsive. The room was silent, absorbing her words. She could practically hear the gears turning in their minds, and hope ignited a fire within her. Perhaps this would mark a shift in perception. Suddenly, Mr. Thompson's voice cut through, low and skeptical. "Interesting approach, Amanda, but how do you plan to ensure these stories translate into actionable data? We are dealing with results, after all." Amanda's pulse quickened. She had expected resistance from him, but the challenge also electrified her. "By framing these stories alongside pertinent metrics," she replied, steadying her voice, "we create a narrative that not only engages our educators emotionally but also appeals to the empirical standards by which we measure success." She briefly locked eyes with Sarah and Brian, who shared a silent exchange of encouragement. It was in their support that she found her footing amidst Mr. Thompson's harsh scrutiny. By the end of the presentation, Amanda felt a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. As the discussion faded into technicalities, she caught snippets of agreement from those who had been skeptical at first. A flicker of validation warmed her resolve. Perhaps she could indeed change the atmosphere. Weeks passed, and the momentum from the presentation couldn't stifle the hustle of daily administrative life. Amanda poured herself into the project, refining methods to integrate student narratives into various departments. Each success was met with another obstacle, but she had learned to see these setbacks not as defeats but as integral parts of the journey. However, on an otherwise routine Tuesday morning, everything changed. As she sat in her office, reviewing feedback from the first series of workshops, a colleague approached with an expression that sent chills down her spine. "Amanda, have you heard about the CEO?" Confusion flickered in her eyes. "What about him?" Well, there are rumors. He's been struggling. People are saying he might actually be homeless." The word echoed in her mind, jarring against the ambitions she had been nurturing. What did it mean for the organization, for her project? The juxtaposition of power and vulnerability was stark, and Amanda felt a surge of urgency. If the CEO, the head of an organization she had begun to challenge, was facing such an unimaginable struggle, what could it mean for her fight for educational reform? A whirlwind of thoughts crashed over her. How could one individual's hardship reshape the initiatives she was advocating? Was this a sign of broader systemic issues within the institution? The instinct to act fluttered within her, yet she chastised herself. She couldn't allow her quest for transformation to conflate with the upheaval of an individual's personal crisis. Reflecting on her motivations, she glimpsed a more profound challenge, not only to change perceptions in educational practices but perhaps to foster compassion and understanding within the boardroom itself. As she mulled over these revelations, the stakes crystallized. Could her initiative now become a vehicle for empathy, guiding them toward deeper connections with the very lives they discussed in sterile meetings? Amanda felt her heart racing as she contemplated the potential ties between her work and the CEO's unexpected reality. This journey was morphing into something she had not anticipated, and now she faced an imminent revelation that could either amplify her mission or complicate her path in unfathomable ways. What was the profound lesson hidden within this intersection of ambition and reality? As she prepared to dive deeper into the implications of this newfound insight, Amanda felt an undeniable pull toward both vulnerability and opportunity. One question loomed large: could she harness this moment to ignite change in ways more significant than she ever envisioned? The next chapter of her life beckoned, more complicated yet infused with purpose. Was she ready to embrace it? Amanda sat at her desk, her fingers hovering above the keyboard. The rumors swirled through her mind like a tempest. She had a choice to make, one that could define the trajectory of her professional journey. How could she address the realities faced by their CEO while still advocating for the students' needs? A gnawing discomfort began to settle in her stomach. While she felt sympathy for the CEO's plight, she couldn't overlook her commitment to the students. Could she transform this unexpected situation into a catalyst for awareness, bridging the gap between the boardroom and the classroom? This thought deepened her resolve, yet also filled her with anxiety. With her breath steadying, Amanda decided the first step was to gather more information. She reached out to a few trusted colleagues, sensing that understanding what lay beneath the CEO's public persona could help her strategize. As she crafted an email, the act felt both threatening and liberating. She was about to break the carefully constructed silence about struggles that plagued even the highest ranks of their organization. The response came the next day, already fraught with hesitations. Sarah agreed to meet. Over coffee, they exchanged subdued glances, the weight of unspoken thoughts looming over them. "How do you think this could impact your initiative, Amanda?" Sarah's voice was low and cautious. Amanda felt the familiar rush of conviction. "If he's willing, I think it could open the door to address the broader systemic issues within our organization. If we humanize the leadership, it could create a trickle-down effect for understanding student experiences." Her words hung in the air, the potential they held both thrilling and terrifying. But the fear of backlash was palpable. What if raising these topics formed a rift rather than a bridge? What if the conversation veered into personal territory and turned against her? Days stretched into a week, and the uncertainty morphed from excitement into a consuming stress. Suddenly, a thought struck her: what if she framed a meeting not just around her project, but around narratives of resilience? Gathering the common threads of struggle, she could illustrate how interconnected their lives were, from leadership to students facing their battles. By the end of the week, Amanda was revitalized, pouring her energy into assembling a presentation that encapsulated both stories of vulnerability and strength. She would create a discourse that allowed empathy to flourish. This initiative might just confront the stagnancy in the boardroom, risk-laden yet essential. When she stood before her peers again, the discussion shifted. The room sparked with a tension she had longed to ignite, each person faced with personal reflections between ambition and reality. She caught glimpses of acknowledgement from those who had once appeared indifferent, eyes sharpened with understanding. It was their discomfort that fueled her fervor. Yet just as a deeper conversation began to unfold, the door creaked open, and in walked the very subject of her discourse, the CEO himself. An unexpected hush fell over the room. Amanda's heart raced as she realized the delicate line she was walking had just expanded into an open field fraught with possibilities. Was this chance an opportunity or a danger? If she misstepped now, could it obliterate her chances for reform? Amanda could feel the eyes of her colleagues, a spectrum of judgment intermingled with curiosity resting upon her. What do we do now? She thought, the weight of the moment crashing down as tension spiked. It was time to confront not only the implications of her initiative but also the fears of vulnerability that gripped her. The meeting was unfolding into a pivotal moment. She could either resonate deeply or falter spectacularly. Would her voice echo the concerns she intended to share, or would it reveal her own trembling foundations of doubt? Amanda took a deep breath to steady her resolve. The moment was upon her. She felt the pulse of the room, a symphony of silent questions. What would she choose to reveal in this tight-knit assembly that now felt both supportive and adversarial? The next chapter of her journey awaited, filled with uncertainty but overflowing with potential. How could she navigate this delicate culmination of courage and insight? Amanda stood before her peers, an unexpected mix of excitement and fear pulsing through her veins. This was not merely a presentation, it was a reckoning, both for her initiative and for the organization itself. As the CEO entered the room, she sensed this was the moment that could either solidify her journey or shatter her ambition. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice steady despite the vulnerability swirling inside her. "Today, I wish to discuss not just educational innovation, but the profound connections within this room, connections that echo our shared human experiences." She paused, meeting the eyes of her colleagues, including the CEO. "Our roles here are intertwined, each of us carrying narratives that shape how we engage with the world and, more importantly, with our students." She turned to the CEO, his visage laden with both authority and the weight of his circumstances. Your story holds a unique place in this conversation. It's a powerful reminder that vulnerability can live alongside achievement, challenging us to reconsider who we elevate and who we serve. The tension in the room shifted. Murmurs of agreement rippled, sparked by Amanda's audacity to bridge the gap between the boardroom and the lives of students. She had learned that her initiative wasn't merely a component of the school curriculum, it was a revolution aimed at fostering empathy and understanding. Emboldened, Amanda continued, detailing the prototypes of student narratives she had collected. These stories show us the landscapes of struggle and triumph that mirror our own, and they deserve to be heard, she articulated passionately. Let us challenge the norms that dictate the narratives of success in our educational framework. As she spoke, a transformative energy brewed, dissolving the skepticism clouding the room. The CEO listened intently, perhaps contemplating his journey through the lens of education and the impact that her innovative project could have on the very individuals he had once sought to guide. The board members began to share their own stories, moments where doubt had shaped their decisions, where understanding could have led them differently. The atmosphere vibrated with the fusion of personal introspection and professional responsibility. It was a celebration of their humanity, and Amanda knew that she'd orchestrated a pivotal shift, a sincere connection forged through shared vulnerability. In the following weeks, her initiative took flight. Workshops blossomed around integrating narrative into the curriculum, flourishing with newfound support. Teachers became advocates, students shared their voices loud and clear, and even the board member who had criticized her once now offered insights and connections to deepen the project's reach. Amanda's clarity strengthened, she no longer felt weighed down by self-doubt. Instead, she stood as a beacon of transformation, her courage shining through even the darkest corners of resistance. She had proven not just to herself but to the world that genuine education must embrace the complexities of life. As she reflected on this journey of growth, Amanda felt an overwhelming pride course through her. She had successfully advocated for a movement that resonated deeply with the institution's fabric, guiding it toward understanding, vulnerability, and ultimately, true educational empowerment. This wasn't merely a project, this was her legacy, her contribution to a system yearning for change. She emerged not only as a teacher but as a leader, her confidence solidified by the recognition she garnered through unwavering commitment and transformative dialogue. Today, she sat at her desk, her professional landscape illuminated with purpose. She had reclaimed her narrative, rewritten her story, and fostered a culture that embraced both courage and empathy. And as the applause from her colleagues echoed in her memory, Amanda felt a surge of gratitude wash over her. This was the moment she had fought for, the culmination of her determination transformed into authentic achievement. Now was the time to share this journey beyond her immediate circle. You need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it truly makes a difference. Comment your reactions and theories about this extraordinary conclusion. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to embrace the inspiration of personal growth and transformation. Don't wait even one more second to show your support.